Thank you so very much. Thank you. And thank you all so much for being here. Clearly, I have worked hard for almost 40 years, and the Lord has ordered my steps. And so that song means so very much to me. Thank you all so much for being here today. To the illustrious president of Delta Xi Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Soror Amelia Hasty Rhodes, to all of the visiting sorors, to all of the members of the Divine Nine, to the many friends who've gathered for this celebration. Let me apologize for my voice because while I'm pretty good right now, but I've just had my second bout with COVID, but the Lord has blessed me and kept me. And now I'm dealing with a little issue of in my arm with a nerve. But I'm here by the grace of God, and I am so thankful to be here. And let me just say to Mayor Alexander and Mayor Mallett, who I have not seen in a while, and I was glad to hear your names. Thank you so very much. And to Miss Livingstone, thank you so much for what you do and for the leadership at this institution. To all of the elected officials, thank you for your service. To be on this campus, nothing could be finer than to be in Salisbury, North Carolina, on this historic premier HBCU campus of Livingstone College, with my Alpha Kappa Alpha Sisters of the Mid-Atlantic region, a dynamic sisterhood serving Salisbury, North Carolina and Rowan County community since 1947, 75 years. God bless you. President Davis, it's good to see you again. And congratulations on your appointment, and thank you for your commitment to education and your service to our students. And being on this campus, I think of W.E.B. Du Bois, who said, of all of the civil rights for which the world has struggled and fought for 500 years, the right to learn is undoubtedly the most fundamental. So President Davis, thank you for your energy and your commitment to our students. And he's right, I'm not going to apologize. I am HBCU strong. And I know the purpose and the value of our schools. And I've worked in Congress to move the conversation away from that old question that we used to hear everybody ask, why do we need HBCUs? Or do we still need HBCUs? And my question back is still the same. What in the hell would we do without our HBCUs? You know, because while our schools represent only 3% of the nation's institutions of higher learning, they graduate, as you've heard, 20% of African Americans who earn undergraduate degrees, 50% of African American professionals and public school teachers, and well over 80% of our black lawyers and judges. And I'm so grateful today. First of all, it's Sunday, and it's always good to be out, and even though we're still in God's house today, because this university, this college was founded as an institution that not only loved the Lord, but that was grounded in our church. But let me bring you sisterly greetings from all of the sorors in Charlotte and Mecklenburg, as well as Guilford County, where I was initiated in Guilford 45 years ago. And so I want to thank Soror Jewel Holland. We have a little connection because her roommate, they actually were on the first line, I think, or the second line here at Livingstone back in 51. And she and her roommate was my sister-in-law, Annie McDonald, who passed away not too long ago, and I got a chance to meet Soror Jewel. but it's good to be here, and certainly thank you for all of that history. It is my pleasure to represent each of you in Washington, D.C. I thank you for the opportunity and for the confidence that you've placed in me by re-electing me this past November to serve a 5th term. You know, as Congresswoman for the 12th District, I'm proud to represent, listen up, Mecklenburg County, part of Cabarrus County, the cities of Charlotte and Concord and Kannapolis, the towns of Davidson, Cornelius, Huntersville, Harrisburg, Matthews, and Mint Hill. Now, when I first started out in 2014, I represented Salisbury and all of the towns that came from Greensboro up 85. We've had 5 different configurations in my 8 years of service. So we can expect in 2 years it'll look a little different, and maybe we'll be able to bring Salisbury back in. But know that I still represent you. So if you need me, just call me. And let me bring greetings today on behalf of the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, Majority Leader Steve Scalise, Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, as well as Stephen Horsford, who is our new chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, and our 58 members known as the conscience of the Congress, and my God, you need a conscience there. But also from the 700,000 plus residents in the 12th District, the bipartisan, bicameral HBCU caucus, I bring greetings as well. But before I get into a sisterhood soaring to greater heights in 2023, I just want to shout out some sisterly love to say something that hasn't been said enough over the past month. Sorors, we made history when we elected Hakeem Jeffries, an extraordinary brother, as the first African-American leader of any political party in Congress. He's a dynamic young man, and I can't wait for 2024 when I can call him Speaker Jeffries. You know, as you may have seen, we had a lot of late nights earlier this month, as it took us a historic 15 votes, by far the most in the past century, to elect the Speaker of the House. But I was proud to vote for Leader Jeffries each and every time. And because, you know, Adams is first on the roll call, I had to be there on time for every vote. And clearly I was. And of course, you shouldn't expect anything less from your member of Congress, because in most jobs, if you don't come on time, you don't have a job. But in my workplace, to be early is to be on time. To be on time is to be late. To be late, we don't tolerate. We might terminate. But you know, while our government is divided in this 118th Congress, if we work together, we can continue to accomplish great things for North Carolina and for our nation. Today's a great day for our sorority, Delta Xi, as we celebrate 115 years of service and sisterhood soaring into 2023. As a 45-year member of this sorority, I am extremely proud to greet all of my sisters of Alpha Kappa Alpha, whose oneness of purpose and service to mankind spans a century plus 1 decade and a half. That's a long time. Service is nothing new for the ladies of Alpha Kappa. It's what we do, it's the rent we pay for living on God's earth. And I applaud my sisters for your incredible leadership, for your tireless advocacy, steadfast dedication, and your commitment to our noble sisterhood, who since 1908, as you've heard, has been on the front lines, fighting for our people, elevating our concerns first in service and then in sisterhood. And so as a sorority, we have intentionally taken time to fellowship and form lifelong relationships while building on our foundation to serve others. And so I appreciate all that this chapter and the chapters across the state and the nation do to elevate those lifelong relationships. And since I was sworn in 2014 as the 100th woman in the 113th Congress, I've had the honor of being your trusted representative in Washington, serving alongside phenomenal Alpha, Kappa, Alpha women, and some good Deltas too. Sorors Eddie Bernice Johnson, Terry Sewell, Sheila Jackson Lee, Frederica Wilson, Bonnie Watson Coleman, Lauren Underwood, the youngest black woman elected to Congress, Nikema Williams, Amelia Sykes, Eleanor Holmes Norton, and now our Vice President, former Senator Kamala Harris. And I was happy just last week to file House Res 31, and a copy is coming to you, Madam President, honoring Alpha Kappa Alpha on reaching the historic milestone of 115 years. So thank you for entrusting me with the responsibility of service that has allowed me to focus on my 4H issues in housing and hunger and healthcare and higher education as personal priorities. But most especially, thank you for sharing my vision and hope for a brighter future for the least of God's people who I believe we must position to soar. And Madam President, I am so grateful to Delta Xi Omega for your work in addressing child hunger. The Adams Hunger Initiative was one of my first projects that I started when I came to Congress, promoting positive youth development and leadership and mental well-being and, of course, senior life. But Alpha Kappa women share an extraordinary legacy, undergirded by a motto of service to all mankind, and embracing in all things, I have some down here, thank you, embracing in all things excellence, but holding fast to the realization that our tasks have only just begun. And so as we look to 2023, to further strengthen our mission, we honor those brave women on whose shoulders we stand, our phenomenal founder, Ethel Hedgeman Lyle, and the courageous women who set the direction and the course for our noble sorority. And so, as we celebrate our founding today, we recommit ourselves to service with a mission of goodwill and good work beyond measure. And in the decades since Alpha Kappa Alpha was founded at Howard University, and my grandson's going to be graduating in a few months from Howard, thank God, the tuition has just gone up and up. But I told him, even though he didn't want to be an Aggie, like his grandmother and his mother and his family, as long as you go to an HBCU, Aaron Nana's money will follow you. And so he's coming out with a good job, more money than I've ever made after 40 years of teaching at Bennett College. And no, I'm not no disparaging on the school, but today it is different. But you know, we've helped to improve social and economic conditions through community service programs, improved education, through independent initiatives, and we've contributed to community building by creating programs and associations and influencing federal legislation by congressional lobbying, like the initiatives of our national sorority and the initiatives of this chapter as well. And so our sisters have been standing up. We've been speaking out, and like me, sometimes you have to cut up for the most vulnerable, fighting against racial and gender discrimination, and providing a network of support for generations of leaders and aspiring public servants, transforming countless lives and improving communications from coast to coast. And for more than a century, our sisterhood has served as the foundation for Alpha Kappa Alpha to be an indomitable force for good in communities, states, the nation, and yes, even the world. Our sisterhood have demonstrated strength and faith and necessary to overcome extraordinary obstacles, including efforts to change, to challenge, and to overturn. Madam President, under your leadership to strengthen our sisterhood, this chapter has created initiatives to empower families, to build economic wealth, enhance the environment, to advocate for social justice, and to uplift our community. You set a tone that aligns with what our communities and our nation need if indeed we as a sorority are to soar in 2023. And Dr. Davis, thank you for that definition. When we talk about soaring, we're talking about moving from where we are upward to where we need to be. And no doubt our country today stands at a crossroads, facing the fierce urgency of now, as Dr. King warned us decades ago. With a democracy in peril, surely soaring in 2023 requires us as black women and black brothers to ask the question, where do we go from now, chaos or community? And even though spoken more than 40 years ago, those words are still real today. You know, I was in D.C. on Capitol Hill on January 6, 2021, just 2 years ago, and I witnessed the insurrection. I witnessed the chaos when the U.S. Capitol was breached and Capitol Police beaten. Some lost their lives trying to protect our democracy, and members of Congress, all of us, even my Republican colleagues who might deny it, we all feared for our lives. Madam President, as a proud Alpha Kappa woman, I've aligned my work in the U.S. House to mirror those of our noble sorority. So as our theme declares that we are better able to soar in 2023 while moving from chaos to community toward a more perfect union. And so as I have observed the situation at hand, soaring, which means moving from where we are to where we need to be, include building communities that adequately address the 4 H's of higher education and housing, healthcare, and hunger. And I don't apologize for that work. The Lord has brought me from a mighty long way, not for me and just for my personal preferences, but when the Lord blesses you, that's an opportunity for you to bless somebody else. You know, educational equity and justice for all students also includes students who look like those folk in this room. And it means that education, where preparation will meet opportunity for all young people, regardless of their zip code, the side of town they live on, how many parents are at home, how much money they have in their pockets, their socioeconomic status, and those things have absolutely nothing to do with their ability to think. Where young people believe in their hearts that they can succeed, and they know that they are not their circumstance. You know, I've noticed many of my colleagues in Congress were unaware of the need to protect HBCUs or the large role that our schools play in our educational system. And so that's why I founded the first bipartisan congressional HBCU caucus, so that soaring would be possible for our schools. I am HBCU strong. And it was an HBCU. I know the difference, because the difference that our schools make in the lives of young people. I know that because of the difference that an HBCU made in my life. That HBCU in Greensboro, North Carolina A&T, took this poor black girl who walked those ghetto streets of Newark, New Jersey. They made a committed investment in me. They molded and shaped me into what they knew I could become. And so I was able to go on after A&T to get my PhD from the Ohio State University, but only because of the North Carolina A&T and HBCU. And I spent 40 years on the campus of Bennett College. I'm getting my retirement right now. But now, by the grace of God, by the prayers of my mother who did domestic work, who didn't finish high school, who didn't have the opportunity to go to an HBCU or any CU for that matter, but who understood how important education would be in my life. You know, sorors, in case you didn't know that, now you know. But as a retired HBCU educator, and as an HBCU graduate twice, my objective in Congress has been to make sure that these schools, like the campus that we're on right now, get the support and the elevation that they need so that they not just survive, but that they are able to thrive. HBCUs like Livingstone, Dr. Davis has been punching above their weight and continue to do a lot with a little. And you know, we've got to do better for our schools. You know, Congress must be accountable in addressing failing infrastructure on our campuses. I saw it when I came through here. Unequal funding and crushing student debt, totaling $1.8 trillion. Student debt is just too damn high. You know, across this country, HBCUs have $25 billion in deferred maintenance, and that cost is just climbing. And that's why I filed the HBCU Ignite Excellence Act. That stands for Institutional Grants, New Infrastructure, Technology, and Education. I've said it so much, I remember it. And that bill is designed to address the infrastructure needs. It was one of my proudest legislative accomplishments during this 117th Congress, but during the 116th Congress, you've already heard about the Future Act. But so I had that bill, 220 co-sponsors. It's a bipartisan, bicameral bill, as a matter of fact, because Senator Coons, Terry Sewell, Representative Sewell, our soror, Republicans French Hill, Tim Scott, and Mike Turner are all on the bill. $50 million we got in funding for these improvements that was included in the omnibus, which is our budget that we just passed a month ago. And in addition, $400 million in funding for the strengthening of HBCU programs. And then a $500 increase in the maximum Pell Grant, which will increase the maximum award now to over $7,000 to cover more of the cost of college. Won't cover it all, but it'll help some. And so if students who come from backgrounds as I did, a first generation, a Pell Grant is so important. We secured a $170 million for Title I and II schools. But in addition to financial challenges, our schools and our students this past year had to navigate COVID-19 and 60 bomb threats that were made against HBCUs. And so I was proud to talk with the FBI and to keep them on track to make sure that we got to the bottom of it. And then I was proud that the resolution condemning those threats did pass the House and the Senate. But like Alpha Kappa Alpha's strong history of supporting families and understanding that healthy families are essential to a foundation of a healthy community, healthcare has been central on my 4-H agenda too. I didn't have healthcare growing up. I had a sick sister who passed away 2 weeks before her 27th birthday from sickle cell anemia. And so I remember those nights and early mornings getting up to go to the hospital, to the emergency room with my mother to take my sister. Why? Because we didn't have health insurance. And so many of the things that I work on in Congress today are things that I've experienced, are things that I don't want other people to have to experience, because it doesn't make sense and we can do better as a nation. As co-founder and chair of the Black Maternal Health Caucus, I continue to focus on the social determinants of health outcomes, and that's why I introduced the Momnibus Act. It was for mommies and their babies, a package of 12 bills that will end the maternal mortality crisis once and for all. Delta Xi, we have an obligation to soar in health in 2023, because in these United States of America, one of the richest countries in the world, the state of maternal health generally, and Black maternal health specifically, is in crisis. As a sorority, I know my sorors share my concern that that's unacceptable for Black women to die from pregnancy-related complications 2 and 4 times the rate of white Americans. That's unacceptable. Some of the richest, most powerful women in the world almost succumbed not to COVID, not to cancer, but to childbirth. Even Beyonce and Serena Williams experienced the dangers of birthing while black. But let me make this crystal clear. In 2023, I guarantee you, if we are engaged, we can soar. Because black maternal health, that crisis, it's preventable. Let me say that again. The black maternal health crisis is preventable. And let me mention here that last year, the healthcare landscape was unexpectedly changed with the Dobbs decision that overturned Roe v. Wade. You all saw me, I got arrested, y'all didn't come get me. I got out anyway. But let me be clear. Regardless of where your position is, abortion care is health care. And as state governments, including North Carolina, move to restrict access to care, I want you to know that Alma Adams will continue to work at the federal level for a woman's right to choose, and I will continue to work to ensure that access to health care is accessible for every North Carolinian. You know, Martin Luther King said it best many years ago when he said of all of the inequality and injustice in the world, injustice in health care is the most shocking and the most inhumane. Can you imagine? 400,000 people in our state right now can't see a doctor because the North Carolina legislature has not expanded Medicaid. Shame on them. I served 20 years down there, tried to get them to do right, but we're still working. And you see, who serves you in Congress, and let me put this in, is determined by who's in Raleigh, because they're drawing the lines, they're drawing people in and out of these districts. So while you want to focus on voting for your president and voting for your member of Congress, let's make sure we do something about our state legislators as well. You know, I also want to mention, among our healthcare and other accomplishments, include the Jobs Act, the CARES Act. You know, we went through this pandemic and we passed a lot of legislation with President Biden. The Bipartisan Infrastructure and Job Acts, the Inflation Reduction Act, which we call IRA, under President Biden. And last Congress, if you are a diabetic like me, on Medicare like me, your copay will no longer be more than $35 a month for life-saving insulin. But you know, we've got to do better than that because children have diabetes. But the Senate disrupted our plan, and they just made it for people who are Medicaid. But you don't want to have to wait till you get 65 to get the medication that you need. So we're working on that as well. But I continue to say that health care, like housing and hunger and education, are not partisan issues. So soaring cannot be possible in 2023 or any year until health care is available for everyone. Of course, the health care crisis of the past 3 years, perhaps the greatest crisis of our lifetime, has been COVID-19. Our health care providers and our frontline workers have done amazing work to vaccinate and protect us against the virus. However, we still need to make sure that our community is boosted as well. I'm just getting over, as I said, my second case of COVID, and thanks to the booster, my symptoms were manageable and my recovery was quick. And so as we soar into 2023, soarers, and we work to make a difference in our communities, I want to remind you that everything that we talk about, the needs that we have, it's all about power. And power is what makes the difference in lives and communities. And the first thing that you have to understand about power and how to get it is you don't ask somebody how to get it or where it is or can you have it. You take it, and once you've taken it, you use it. And so as we focus on celebrating 115 years soaring into 23, Alpha, Kappa, Alpha, we've got the power to empower. We've got the power to empower. And so with more than, think about it, 120,000 active members and more than 1,046 chapters across an international landscape, we have an ongoing history. And we have a reputation for making a global impact through local change to galvanize and strategize, to advocate and educate and agitate as well. You know, empowerment for social justice underpins all of it, everything that we do. And it's important to remember that everything that we can do and the change that we want and need to see for our communities will be up to us and can only come with the assurance of the people's right to vote and the ability to have free and fair elections, because that's what democracy looks like. You know, Soros, on this Founders Day, as we remember our charge and our responsibilities as Alpha Kappa women, it's important that we go just beyond our concern to ignite within ourselves a true commitment and a continuation for service to empower the least, the lost, and the left behind. Be committed enough to reach back, ladies, as you climb Jennifer's ladder, to reach down and pull somebody else along. You know, there's a difference between being concerned and being committed. Everybody's concerned, Dr. Davis, about something, but when you're concerned about something, you talk it to death. You just talk about the problem, you meet about the problem, you don't do much about it, and your position is negotiable. But when you are truly committed, you don't just talk about the problem, you do something about it, you act, and your position is never negotiable. Kind of like the chicken and the pig. The chicken that provided the eggs for the meal simply made a contribution. But the pig that provided the bacon and thus gave his life, he made a commitment. So you see, commitment exceeds that of providing minimum substance, and it goes far beyond that which is required. Y'all think about that at breakfast tomorrow. Commitment involves sacrifice, folks. My sisters, my brothers, there's still a lot of work to do. But we can get it done if we are united. If we're united, we can move our community forward. And if enough of us are united, we can plant trees for future generations, and we can accomplish anything. Because, you know, somebody once said that a community can only grow great when old men and old women plant trees under which we know we will never sit. God bless you, Soros. God bless Alpha Kappa Alpha.